What's up, y'all? Mark Smith with JBS Training Group here to give you a little overview on scope mounting, hopefully to kind of bypass some of the troubles you may find along the way if you didn't have this information regardless. So what I've got here to start out with, I think it's super important to have quality parts to do this with. It's going to short circuit or shortcut a lot of issues and headaches along the way, man. If you've got a really, really nice scope, don't put it in a really, really garbage mount. That's not the way to be. We want to take a sports car and we want to put good tires on it, right? We want to take a good parachute and put a good skydiver with it, right? We want to take a good scope, put a good mount with it. We don't want to take garbage on one end and really good and put them together and then hope for the best. So what I've got here for the purposes of this video is a fantastic Vortex Razor 1-6. This optic has been kind of the flagship line of the higher end Vortex stuff for a while now, or at least it is in my circle. Everybody knows what the Vortex Razor is. It's a very, very, very highly respected optic in the LPVO world. So I've got one of those. I've got a Badger C1 Plus mount, which is one of the finest uni mounts ever made. The modularity, the precision, the quality is all there. And so these two things together should create a system that we can use and we can trust and we can rely on. It's also going to make the process of putting these things together and getting them on a gun a little bit more streamlined than having to fight through lower quality parts, right? So what we want to make sure to do first before we even start to have this conversation is have the tools available to actually do this the right way. So for the purposes of what we're doing today, I got a little bit of lubricant, I got some Loctite, I've got some paint pens, and I've got some Fix-It Sticks torque value measurers. So I don't think that it's a smart thing to try to mount a scope without a torque wrench, especially if you've never done this before. Is it possible to mount a scope without a torque wrench and it be okay? Sure. It's possible to smoke cigarettes and not get cancer, but that don't make it a great idea, right? So it's not expensive to invest in some of this stuff, right? I think I've got this entire kit for like $100 and I use it on my optics all the time. I also use this kit to fix a lot of people's optics that come loose at matches that didn't have one of these kits to put their scope on with. We call that a clue, right? So make sure that you've got good quality stuff all the way around, yeah? From there, we want to make sure that the parts that we have are compatible. So this is a 30mm scope. That is in reference to the optic housing itself. We've got 30mm, 34, 35, 36. Make sure that the optic mount that you've chosen, the scope mount itself, matches the scope, right? So we can't put a 30mm mount a 30mm scope in a 34mm mount. That's not going to work, and vice versa. We can't put a 34mm scope in a 30mm mount. So make sure that the mounts are compatible with the scope that you're putting into them. From there, let's talk a little bit about the parts and the pieces and kind of what they're called. So these are called the ring caps. These are the actual caps that are going to go down on the mount itself. On the scope side of the house, we've got an ocular lens that's going to be the lens that our eyeballs actually looking through. We've got an objective lens that's going to be the lens that's looking towards the target. We've got turrets. That's going to be the elevation turret on the top. The windage turret's going to be on the right side. And then I've got a illumination adjustment over here on this side and a magnification ring. On the back side, also where the ocular lens is something known as a diopter. We'll get into all this stuff, why it matters and why you should care about it along the way. First thing we need to do before we start torquing on anything and putting stuff in its final permanent location is we need to set up something called eye relief. Eye relief is going to be the distance that your eyeball can be from the ocular lens itself and see a good full image, full field of view, no scope shadow, and have the image be as good as it can be. So the way that I like to do this is I'm going to go ahead and take this cantilever mount. It's supposed to be cantilevered towards the front of the gun, towards the muzzle end of the gun to give us the appropriate eye relief. Don't mount it backwards. Set the scope in there, and then I'm going to get it where in between the turrets themselves and the magnification ring, this little piece of optic body, I'm just going to kind of get it where it's lined up somewhat in the middle. Not because that's the right thing to do, it's just because it makes me happy and it gives me kind of a reference of what I'm trying to do here. For the purposes of doing this, you don't even really have to put both the ring caps on. You can just do one if you want to, but because we're making a really super cool video, I'm going to go ahead and put both of them on there so that everything looks uniform and in sync and somebody on the internet's not mad about it. All right, so as I'm doing this, what I want to make sure not to do is to get it torqued down so much that I can't actually move the optic in the mount itself, because I'm getting ready to set up eye relief, which means I'm going to have to be moving the optic around a little bit. So I want to get it snug enough so that the optic will hold its position, right? Especially like when inverted is a good reference. If it'll hold its position while inverted, but you can apply pressure and shift it around, that's a pretty good place to be. Once you get it to that position, go ahead and stick it on the gun in a position that you would assess is probably going to be appropriate. A really good rule of thumb for this, or not rule of, it's not a rule, it's just a good suggestion, a good starting point, is to take your rifle, and wherever the charging handle is in your rifle, the ocular lens being somewhere in line with that charging handle is going to be a pretty good place to start. It's not a hard, fast rule. It's just a good starting point if you don't know what you're doing, right? For the purposes of this video, we've removed the operating parts of the gun. There's no bolt carrier group in this rifle. There's no charging handle in this rifle. So I'm going to mount it somewhere about where the charging handle would typically be. Just get it finger tight so that it holds on long enough for you to get your eye relief set. And the orientation of the scope, or the setup of the scope, needs to be, in my opinion, at max magnification. So this is a 1:6 optic. I'm going to go ahead and take it up to 6. The reason I'm doing that is because max magnification is going to be where the worst eye relief is. So eye relief is something that's affected by magnification. If you increase magnification, you decrease eye relief, you decrease field of view. If you reduce magnification, you increase field of view, you increase eye relief. So therefore, I want to set the eye relief up at the worst possible place it's ever going to be, right, which is max magnification, understanding that anything other than that is going to be better, right? So if I get it set up where it's right at 6, 4 is going to be fine. 2 is going to be even better. 1 is going to be perfect, right? So the way that I like to do this is don't let the optic tell you what to do, right? You tell the optic what to do. So mount the gun like you always like to mount it, and make sure that when you get into the optic, you can see a full field of view. What we want to avoid is getting on the gun and then craning our head forward or backing our head off somewhere that's different than how we would always shoot, right? So I want to get on the gun like I always shoot. Sometimes I'll close my eyes just not to bias this, and then I'll open my eyes and see what I see. If I see a good full field of view, minimal scope shadow or no scope shadow from one side or the other, then I know that's probably a pretty good place. So for the purposes of this optic, that's actually pretty perfect. So I'm going to leave it here in the mount. I'm going to take the mount back off of the gun, and I'm going to put it into a Badger dead level. So a Badger dead level is a really, really nifty little tool to utilize if you're doing scope mounting on a fairly regular basis. It's possible to do the scope mounting without it, but it really, really does make life easier, man, if you can get one. You can do this on a rifle, but in order to do it on a rifle, what you have to do is you have to mount the rifle in some sort of fixture, whether it be a mag block on a vise or something like that, and you have to get the top rail level. So you can use a bubble level, you can use one of the rail mounted levels, you can use a number of different options, but this has to be level. What we're going to do is we're going to level the reticle to that, right? So the Badger dead level just allows me to not have to work this thing into a perfectly level orientation, because I can take the dead level and I can adjust it to be in its perfect level orientation. So that is going to be pretty good right about there. And now what I've got to do is level the reticle. The way that I like to do this, I just take a blank white background. I've got a USPSA target flipped around backwards to the white side. Got it on the wall with a string running straight down with a weight on the bottom of it. That's called a plumb bob. What that's going to do is show us perfect top dead center, perfect level to the earth. Then I'm going to level the reticle so that the reticle itself is in line parallel with that string. And now that's as level as I can ever get this thing outside of having super special machinist tools and things like that, right? The way that I do this is I put that background somewhere around 3 to 6 feet away from the ocular lens of the optic, and then I'm going to push light through the objective lens. That is going to print for me on the background an image of the reticle. In order to get that fine-tuned and get it to where I can really see what's going on, you can actually adjust the diopter, and you can adjust the focus of that reticle. If you've got a first focal plane optic where the reticle grows in size as you magnify, you're probably going to want to magnify it up just so you can see the reticle really well and see that the reticle is level with that reference that we've got on that blank background. Once you get that done and you've got everything good and level, it's time to torque it. Now, we have to be careful when we're torquing it. We don't want to screw up what we just did, right? So it's possible that as you start to apply torque to these rings, if you don't do it the right way and you don't pay attention as you're doing it, that you're actually turning the optic in the optic mount and you don't realize it. So you're actually causing a reticle that's not level to be in play by the way that you're mounting it. So what I like to do is just start out putting a little bit of torque on these ring caps, like not even finger tight. I just want to make sure that as I'm doing this, there's a gap on each side in between the ring cap and the optic mount itself. I want to maintain the space between those two places on each side simultaneously, meaning I don't want to take one side and crush it down and then the other side have a big gap. Both sides typically on good quality stuff is going to have a gap on each side. Once you meet the torque value that's required, I want that gap to be the same. I want it to be basically exactly the same if I can do that. So the way that I like to do this is get it to where the gap is pretty similar. And then from there, I'm going to start putting this thing on there very similar to how Daddy used to tell us how to change a spare tire. You don't want to start with one side, just crush it all the way down, then do the other side. I want to do a little bit on one part and then a little bit on another part on the opposite side, right? So I like to work in an X pattern. If it's easy to remember for you, top left, then go to the bottom right. Go to the bottom left, go to the top right, okay? Go to the top left, go to the bottom right, so on and so forth, and just work that X pattern until you end up where you've got pretty solid torque on this thing. It's not gonna move in the rings. Everything is pretty squared away. Then that's where our torque value, torque limiter comes in. For the purposes of this, I like a progressive torque value gauge. I can use it for so many different things, right? And I don't have to carry a bunch of different limiters with me. I can just use one for everything. So for this, I'm going to turn this. The rings on this Badger C1 require 20 inch-pounds. So what I like to do first is go to about 10 all the way around. So I'm going to put 10 on that one. I'm going to put 10 on that one. I'm going to put 10 on this one on the bottom right here. And then I'm going to put 10 on the top one. And I'm just going to keep doing that until all of them are at 10. Then I'm going to go to 15. Then I'm going to go to 20, so on and so forth. And I'm progressively adding torque to all the screws, all the bolts, all at the same time. That way one side doesn't get overly tight and the others are still loose. Once I've got the first ring tightened up, before I start to apply torque to the second ring, I want to shine that light through the scope again. Make sure the dead level or your gun or whatever it is you've got this thing fixed on, make sure that's level. And I want to check my reticle level one more time to make sure that it didn't twist or torque around while I was putting that ring cap on. Once I see that that's still good to go, I'll then tighten the second ring. Once the second ring is tight, what we need to do then is put the mount itself onto the rail of the gun and torque that down. Now, when I do that, I do it a pretty specific way for a couple of reasons, and I'll kind of talk you through why I do it the way that I do it. So once I'm ready to go to the gun, this is all torqued down and good to go. When I put this back on the gun, I want to make sure, number one, to go to that same spot that I put it at initially when I was checking the eye relief on it. And I'm going to get it just kind of finger tight. When I'm doing this, what I'll do first is I'll take a little bit of lubricant and I'll just put a little bit of lubricant on the mating surfaces in between where the scope mount itself is going to contact the actual rail. The reason that I do this, I want to make sure that there's no friction torque being applied to this, meaning two separate metal surfaces that are dry coming in contact and then applying friction torque that's supposed to slide these things together. It's possible that you can get dry torque or friction torque that causes the torque limiter to say, yeah, you're there, but then when I bump it, it actually shifts itself and we lose zero, we get loose mounts, things like that. So I'm going to lube that up at all of the surfaces where the mount's going to contact the rail itself. And then when I get the mount on the gun, you can kind of hear that clicky sound is the locking mechanism in between the pick rail. So the locking blocks that are on the bottom of the mount, they're moving fore and aft inside the pick rail, right? What I want to do is to eliminate the ability of the scope to be moving around under recoil. The way that we do that is we take the mount itself and we're going to push it towards the muzzle, because when the gun recoils, it's going to try to recoil backwards. If the locking blocks are up against the back of the pick rails, they can't go anywhere when the pick rails try to push against them, if that makes sense. So I've got that finger tight. It's time to switch over to the other torque limiter and apply some torque to the mount. This is a 1/2 inch nut, so I'm going to put a 1/2 inch adapter into my torque limiter here, and I'm going to go to 65 inch-pounds. Again, just like with the rings, I do it a little bit at a time, so I'm going to take this one up to about 35. I'm going to take the back one up to about 35. Then I'm going to go to 65, and then I'm going to go to 65. Once I'm there, what I always like to do, the cross bolts that go through the mount itself that interact with the nuts on the opposing side, I like to take a little brass hammer and just give them a little tap. What that's going to do is it's going to shake out any of the friction torque that might be in the system. And now every time I've done this, what I get is a nut that turns just a little bit more whenever I do that. So I had it initially at 65, and now when I go back to 65 again, the nut's torquing just a little bit more. We're kind of shaking out that friction torque. From there, what we want to do is get everything witness marked and whatnot. So I like to put witness marks on my mounting nuts and hardware. I like to put witness marks basically on anything that threads onto a gun, just so as I'm moving around doing things, bumping the gun off of stuff, if something weird starts to happen, I can just kind of take a peek and see whether or not my witness marks are screwed up, and that's my issue. Let's talk about setting up the diopter. Once we've got the scope mounted, eye relief set, everything's good to go, we need to affect the diopter. So the diopter is not there just for decoration only. It has a purpose. So we're talking specifically about LPVOs in this video and setting up the diopter for those. If we were talking about other scopes that are 3 to 18, 4 to 16, 5 to 25, so on and so forth, we would do this a little different way. Some people are going to have a little bit of an issue with this, and that's okay, man. This is just Mark's way. It's not necessarily the right way. It's just the way that I've always done it, and I've never been led wrong by it. I also have fixed many an optic that's been screwed up by doing this next little thing I'm going to talk about. Try it out, man. See if it works out for you. If it doesn't, go back to what you were doing, right? We can still be friends, no problem. What I like to do is think about this. You bought the LPVO because it had a 1X on it. I must assume that because you bought the 1 to something, whether it's 1 to 6, 1 to 8, 1 to 10, that the 1X is prioritized because you're probably going to live your life there most of the time, right? Most people with LPVOs don't run around with them on 3X. They run around with them on 1X. And I like to kind of think of an LPVO as it's a red dot with magnification on board if needed and a measuring stick on board if needed, right? So I primarily am using it as a red dot at 1X. Therefore, the 1X needs to be good. It needs to be as perfect as it possibly can be to a true 1X red dot. So the way that I like to do it, set it to 1X, and I'm going to take the diopter and I'm going to back it all the way out. The reason that I back it all the way out is we're taking this, and as we turn it towards the plus side, we're putting your eyeball in a very relaxed state. Your eyes can only relax so much, right? So when we back it all the way out, there's not an eyeball on planet Earth that can rectify this image. Your eye can't relax enough to fix this and make it not blurry. But if we started all the way in, cranked all the way in, it is possible that your eye, being the muscle that it is, it can flex to try to rectify that image. And you end up looking at something that you think is a true 1X image, but really your eyeball's just in a flex state, and it's making it seem that way. This is why dudes end up getting headaches, and they'll get the gun up sometimes and they see this weird fisheye effect, and it's just kind of not good, right? I like to look at something that's around 25 to 50 yards away. Don't do this too close. If you do this too close, basically I haven't seen an LPVO yet that 10 yards and in doesn't look kind of weird. And so I want to make sure to get enough distance to really get the good out of this. I'm going to look at something that's about 25 yards away, get my eyeball in the gun. That looks terrible, right? So what I'm going to do is start to roll this diopter, and you'll see the image start to kind of come together. And as I'm rolling it, what I'm looking for is the threshold of where my eyeball goes from a relaxed state to a flex state. And you'll kind of see the image will kind of, it'll change, and eventually it'll get to a place where you feel like this eye sees what this eye sees. Everything's flat, everything's good, true 1X, and then it'll change and go out of that and start to get worse as you continue to dial in, right? We're trying to find the perfect sweet spot for your eyeball in between those two places, if that makes sense. This is to the optic what prescription eyewear is to your eyeballs. Everybody's diopter setting is going to be a little bit different. That's why I say, like, this thing is not there just to be there. You need to use this. I think that a lot of people are going through life thinking that their 1X is like really screwed up and so is everybody else's. That is not true. If the 1X of your optic doesn't look like a true 1X, you either have a very poor quality optic that's not capable of it, or you need to adjust your diopter, right? what I've found when doing this is because this is to the optic what prescription lenses are to your eyeballs, if you get this thing set up to 1x where everything's good and true and good to go, it's going to be good and true and good to go when you get up to 6x as well, right? So this is why I don't like to do it from the 6x point. I like to do it from the 1x point, again, because I'm prioritizing the 1x. So once you've got diopter set up, again, I like to take a little paint pen. I'm going to put a mark on the ocular housing and the diopter to make sure that those two things stay in alignment. As you're running around in kit, as you're getting in and out of vehicles, as you're throwing these things in the back of trucks, you're running through stages, just doing whatever you're doing with your guns, absolutely possible for this to get spun or moved or bumped. So I want some way to be able to look through the optics, say, hey, something's not right, look down and be like, oh crap, my diopter's not aligned, right? And be able to go back to that spot. If you want to get super into it like I do, I like to put opposing witness marks, meaning I'll put a witness mark on this side and on this side, and I'll do them in separate colors. That way, if this thing happens to spin 180 degrees, I don't get two witness marks that are lined up and looks right. I get a red, blue, and a red, blue, and I'm like, oh, never mind, red's supposed to go to red, blue's supposed to go to blue kind of thing, right? The reason that I do two sides is because it's possible, and I've had it happen before, where over time, just the witness mark just gets rubbed on and ends up getting kind of rubbed off of there by your kit, by, you know, just general use. Outside of that, once the diopter's set up, once everything's mounted and true, it's time to go zero the gun, man. Once you get the gun zeroed, go have fun. Come see us, jbstraininggroup.com, and y'all have a good day.